Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. I love talking to founders, especially when they're in the early days. They're fresh in the trenches of building a consumer brand, and especially the food and beverage founders who I follow on Instagram, and they come onto the podcast to share the behind the scenes. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Alessia Vettese, she is the founder and CEO of Pari, which is a new zero proof drink. And first off, the branding is gorgeous. I've been following online. Alessia, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to dive into it all, definitely in that early stage in the trenches like you talked about. So excited to chat.
Perfect. Perfect. So let's kick it off with your story. I would love to hear a little bit of just your personal background and why you started Pari.
Yeah, so I would say, going back to the early days of my career, I remember in like the early to mid 2010s, always being so in awe of these badass female founders who were doing amazing things and building, relatively young founders who were building amazing companies in the lifestyle and consumer categories. And for a very long time, it was my dream to like actually work at those companies, see what these women were doing behind the scenes and like learn how they were building their brands. And I had started my career in management consulting, but in 2017, I went to business school kind of in hopes of pivoting to actually transition to work at these early stage companies, and was super fortunate through internship experiences and in my first few years post graduation to work at some really cool brands in the consumer space like Glam Squad, Rent the Runway, Third Love, and in
Cool.
many of these cases, yeah, they were amazing, and in many of these cases, even at various stages of startup growth, these brands were often still led by their founders or founding teams. And it really was interesting to see from the inside what they were doing, like much more fast-paced environments than I had come from, and just a lot less structured. And just even seeing how they like incubated ideas and initiatives internally was so different for me. And it built a lot of confidence being, inside and getting to work on a lot of these. And I had that moment while I was there where I thought to myself, if I ever feel like I have an idea or, a problem that I'm really passionate about, I'm going to take that leap into entrepreneurship myself. And that came about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago now. I went on a health journey, we could say. I had started getting into long distance running and entered a few races, and quickly realized that if I didn't sleep well or I consumed something that didn't make me feel great, I would be feeling it on my training runs the next day. And so I decided to cut out alcohol for that period of time, and it really was a game changer for me. I was sleeping better, I was more present, all the good things that people talk about when they stop drinking. And the challenge though at that point, 2+ years ago, was there weren't many options that I was excited about on the market. It was like I would go out to dinners and bars, and it was like these artificially sweet mocktails, or I'd go to the grocery store, and the options back then, it was like flavored sparkling waters or kombuchas were pretty much the most complex they had. And even the first RTD SKUs on the market at that point in non-alc, I would order them directly from their site to try them because they weren't widely available as they are now. But I found that many of the taste profile, it really just didn't resonate. It was often, drinks that were more bitter. I definitely have a sweeter palate. And I also just, I wasn't seeing what I was looking for, which was natural ingredients, sweeteners that were palatable to me, and a taste profile that I was excited about. And so from there, I got connected with a formulator in my network, and we spent over a year developing what's now our modern mule. Flash forward to this summer in June, we launched the brand, and so exciting to actually have this tangible product now that I can bring to the world. And I know I brushed over a massive chapter there, which I'm sure we'll get into today and in the in-between, but super excited to be on this side of things and have founded my own company. And I'm really excited about the offering we've brought to the market.
So interesting. And I love how you learn the behind the scenes and working at brands that were particularly female founded and led, and seeing behind the curtain of what it really takes to create a consumer brand. So that is really cool insight that you had such early on, and then to be able to leverage that to build your own consumer brand. Were there any things in particular that one you found really helpful to keep and integrate into your business now, like you said, incubation, and then also some things that you're like, "Well, if they're figuring it out, I bet I could figure it out." Anything that was kinda, like, surprising to you also in those experiences?
Yeah, I would say, for me, and I can talk about kind of an intentional brand strategy we've taken as a result of this, but I just saw the importance of being intentional and responding very quickly and learning and iterating quickly to feedback and how important
Mhm.
that is. And that's something that I intentionally brought into, the business day one with Pari. Something that I think is maybe an atypical approach that we've taken is I did launch with only one SKU, and that was a very conscious decision for me. I wanted to perfect something that I thought was the best representation of Pari, the brand, as I was looking to bring it to the world and work to perfect that, with our formulator, like I mentioned. I knew that only with a physical product would I be able to have that entryway to conversations with not only real consumers. I had fantastic friends and family try and give feedback, but on that scale, talking to consumers and even thought leaders in the space, like actually having a physical product to send samples, to have those conversations with retailers. And by no means do we want to be a single product brand. We've developed other SKUs, and I'm really excited that we're going to have another one launching hopefully in the next few months. But I knew from my experience at these consumer brands the importance of that real customer and retailer feedback. And I felt like this made me a lot more informed, gave me a good pulse on what consumers are looking for. And especially knowing how expensive it is in consumer brands, but especially what I'm seeing in beverage, which is, it's really expensive to do a co-packing run and they're often
Mhm.
high MOQs. So I wanted to be as intentional and thoughtful as possible with this, get that feedback. And I'm now really excited as we grow to introduce new options for our retailers and our consumers. But I think without my experience, I probably would have gone all in, probably with 2 to 3 initially. And so I'm so glad we were intentional the way we were.
I respect a one SKU launch. I support that. I think that for a emerging brand, that makes sense to get proof of concept without going so far down the rabbit hole and seeing, like, is this a viable product that people like? And again, collecting feedback and doing something really well to get it out the door. So I support that strategy. Something else that you brought up is the growth in this space, right? It feels like there's always a new brand right now launching. How have you really differentiated Pari from anything else in the market?
Yeah, it is really interesting how much it's grown. And I think it's exciting for everyone who's in the category when your category is growing as a whole, because it wasn't that way, 2+ years ago. Like I was saying, when I got started, I was like, there are no options. And now there are so many, which is really great. But I do find that with Pari, I'm excited with the value prop that we bring. And I think what continues to be unique about us is our simple list of familiar and natural ingredients. So during the ideation phase, I was talking to family and friends and collecting a lot of feedback about, their experience as consumers. And what I heard so many times was that they would go to a store, turn around a drink, and it would be this long list of unfamiliar ingredients that put the onus on the consumer to then like research these things, look them up.
Right.
Or, it could have been a healthy, plant extract, but because it was an unfamiliar name to them, they thought this isn't healthy or this is something I don't quite want to put in my system. And so I passed that feedback along to our formulator right away and, really focused on what we have now, which is a drink with only 3 ingredients. I didn't want anything chemical sounding, sweeteners that weren't palatable, or just these long lists that were unfamiliar in general. And so super excited that we have this complex offering that is so simple on the ingredient list. And what we can also promise there is that, every ingredient that we do have is natural and authentic, and high quality. So we have gone to the country of origin for our ingredients. Our agave is from Mexico, 5th generation producers. Our ginseng extract is from, depending on the season, China or South Korea. And so we're really going with these high quality, fewer ingredients that resonate with people. And I'll add one more thing to that, which is in the same vein, our packaging. I think there's this temptation to do, the most attention grabbing, brightest packaging. in what is becoming, a more crowded space. But for us, I wanted the outside to reflect what was on the inside. And so we went
Mhm.
with this, chic, upscale, minimalistic packaging. And I'm so glad we did, because it really reflects what's inside the can and that consumer promise of what's different for us at Pari. And we've gotten great feedback from consumers and retailers. So super, super happy with how we approach that.
Your packaging is really beautiful. That's something that caught my eye. I like how you source from the origin of the country and communities that produce the ingredients. I think that in itself is a really interesting differentiator, also. Monday night, I went to Culinary Industry Night at the Libby Project, and they had a panelist of chefs talking about the importance of sourcing and how it just tastes so much better when you could get to the best of the best of where you're sourcing from. So I love that your products are really thoughtful and intentional like that, because you're going to get a more potent, flavorful, more complex ingredient because it's sourced in a more mindful way.
Yeah, I appreciate to, hearing that others are conscious of it and thinking about it and sharing that message too, because it does involve that extra step for sure on the end
Right.
of, on our end from the sourcing piece and what already is complex, as we look at like the operations supply chain side of things. But it's something I wanted to be able to promise with our first drink and any subsequent ones we do. So yeah, yeah.
I really like that. So you talked a bit about getting it the first SKU in the hands of friends, family, some early adapter consumers, some thought leaders in the space, retailers. What is the strategy now? So you launched officially in June. Can you give us a overview of how that all went down? So June rolled around, you're like, okay, we're doing this thing. It's going live. Like, how was your launch? How did you launch it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we definitely started very intentionally with like the first, fortunately being in a market like New York, there's so
Right.
many amazing partners here that we could start to chat with and get samples in their hands. So before I even was ready to launch and had samples, I went door to door to a target list of, retailers that were kind of on my like dream list, you could say. Spoke to many of them to figure out, what that process would look like to be considered. And then went back a couple months later when we finally had some samples. I walked in with, a couple samples in hand for every retailer and a sell sheet that we made that really highlighted everything that was unique about it. The nutrition facts label, barcode, and everything they would need to keep it simple. And often I was meeting with a salesperson there who maybe wasn't quite the general manager or a decision maker. But what I would work to get that contact information in that discussion so that I could follow up with them and have a conversation to see what they were looking to add to their store at the time. And so I developed that long list of contacts that when we were ready to actually ship product, I could reach out to, and they had samples, and many of them had, really enjoyed it and were excited to carry it. And so that was kind of a starting point. And then we've also invested in, some of the showcase opportunities in New York at Pop-Up Grocer, in their summer rotation, and Spirited Away, which is a fantastic non-alc bottle shop here in the city. Having an opportunity to partner with them to get some additional visibility, and have them reach their consumers as well has been really amazing, because I do consider them, the thought leaders in the space, and just kind of putting up my hand to go to every opportunity that I learn about too, as a founder and as a solo founder, making connections and asking people for help and to make those intros to partners where they think, they could help us in various capacities launch as a business. And so it's kind of, I learn different things each week and new things I should be thinking about as we grow, but kind of starting with that approach and then making new connections and learning new things to help us get into additional doors or new opportunities as a brand.
Is that what you're working on now? Just growing the distribution?
Yeah, it's definitely a big part. I mean, we're growing much more quickly beyond just the metro area, and fortunately, getting onto wholesale platforms has helped us also reach non-alc bottle shops and restaurants in different states. So we're in 12 states right now and about 50 retailers, and I'm
Amazing.
thank you. It's been really exciting growth, and leveraging what we've learned from our initial retailers and the metrics we have there to get into additional accounts and grow our reach across the country has been a focus for us. I would say the physical retail piece is our focus at the moment, even though you can purchase us on our website. But It's been great to kind of learn as we grow and continue to build additional accounts, I would say is really that focus right now.
What an awesome start. I mean, thinking about we're recording this on in September and you officially launched in June and you're in 50 retailers. Congratulations.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure like when you're in the trenches of it, you're like, yeah, like that's another account. Cool. Like what's the next one? But really taking a step back, that's you've done an awesome job. So just congratulations.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think,
Of
we didn't even
course.
know about so many of these accounts, but I've developed so many amazing connections, and these are fellow small business owners in many cases. So it's exciting to chat with them and grow to these accounts. So
So cool. So what is the vision for Pari? What would you love to build with this brand?
yeah, I think for us, definitely becoming a go-to option for those who are at various stages of their sober curious journeys. And, as the category grows, playing our part in, evolving attitudes toward relationship with alcohol and what other options are out there for sure. Hoping to expand, like I said, across a different, and more accounts in different states, hopefully even getting into Canada at some point where I'm from originally. And hopefully
Cool.
yeah, expanding our reach. And I think something that's become, a lot more meaningful to me than I even realized at first is as we partner with different, vendors, suppliers, many overseas, like I've mentioned, there's this feeling of like we're growing together. Like, the business we bring them is contributing to their livelihoods as well. And I am really excited about the opportunity that like as we win, they win too. And I want to grow as a business. We're starting with non-alc, and that is absolutely the anchor and the focus of this business. But I could even see us moving to like adjacent categories in the
Right.
future, and developing these relationships out and building additional products in our portfolio. So it's really exciting kind of from like a community piece as we've built this almost team around us, even though it's just me day to day. It's this like team around, I feel, in this community where we will hopefully grow together. And that has personally become really meaningful to me too as we grow the business.
I love hearing that. I'm all about building community around a brand, but also building community around a founder, especially for a solo founder. That can make or break just your spirit and enthusiasm because it's so hard. But to know that you are building that community around you is such a game changer. So again, like that's a great piece to remind a founder of like there's people around you who want to support, who are on a similar journey, and so reaching out, connecting, is such a powerful piece of that. You mentioned so many great pieces of the pie of building a brand, how you're thinking about it, but is there any advice that really stands out to you that you would share with a founder who's like maybe a year behind? Maybe they're just starting in formulation, they're refining what makes their product different, they're probably in a crowded um, category. Anything that you would share with them?
Yeah, I would say, one piece is definitely connects with what we were just chatting about, the network you're building. So I would say the first is, you hear it a lot, but don't be afraid of cold outreach. I know it can be intimidating at first, but I think the shift for me was the realization, like I've mentioned before, that, many of the people you're reaching out to at this early stage of the business are, fellow freelancers, small business owners, and like they are in your shoes or have been very recently too. They get it. And I
Right.
think these are the types of people who are often most receptive to those conversations. We've had, a really great response rate every time I've DM'd someone, emailed someone from like a contact form on their website. And so it's been really fruitful, and you never know when you're going to make great connections through that cold outreach. So I would say that was a good shift for me. And, the worst that can happen is you don't hear back from somebody, but I would encourage founders to do that. And I would also say a piece of advice, especially as a solo founder to other solo founders, is I know it can be tough to ask for help and relinquish control early on in the business. But as you have a growing business, you will need help. And so I think being very honest with yourself as early as possible about perhaps, skill gaps in your skill set or areas that you can't just research your way to a solution to, where you really need someone who's been there before. And so don't be afraid to kind of be honest with yourself early and bring on that support. And it doesn't have to mean bringing on a team day one. I've found platforms like Upwork really valuable. I've worked with a number of different freelancers there, and your time is valuable as an early stage founder. And so freeing it up to focus on the things that you're good at and passionate about, that energize you day to day to give the best to your business, but also bringing in that support early has been something that I've worked on, very consciously in the last few months, in asking for help from others.
I love that you said that because as a brand strategist working with so many early stage founders, it really can make or break just having that soundboard and thought partnership so they don't feel so alone. That's probably one of the biggest pieces of working with an early stage founder of like they feel more confident in what they're building because it's organized for them. They have that support, they can think it through. So I'm so glad that you touched upon that because I think that the perception, and I know I used to have this pressure on myself that I thought, well, I have to do it all myself or it's not good enough, or I won't be quote unquote a real entrepreneur or a real founder if I don't figure every single thing out myself. And that is just a really
Exactly.
hard piece of thing to put on yourself. So I'm so glad that you talked about that because it truly helps you feel more at ease with what you're building and working with experts to save you time and money also.
Yeah, it really does save the time and money in the long run. And like I've prided myself on being scrappy to this point. I mean, starting with the one SKU and just a lot of decisions we've made from the
Yep.
get-go. But I think in the long run, it does save you money because, and time, absolutely. Like your time is valuable. And there are so many people out there who, especially in 2024, I mean, people who are offering fractional support, freelancers like I talked about, and
Right.
consultants, brand strategists, people who really bring in that expertise who you can bring on to support your business in various ways. So
I
it's
love
been huge
that.
resonating with that so much, what you
I
were
love
saying.
that. Has there also, because you mentioned wholesale platforms, any that have been really helpful for you?
Yeah, so we're on Fair and Air Goods. I think both are great, at generating leads. But even if you've worked with brands in the past, making it an easy way for them to
To
reorder in an
order.
organized manner. So, I got on both pretty quickly at the referral of a few other the mention of from a few other founders, and it's been great for us in terms of getting sample requests, connecting with people we wouldn't have otherwise, and getting new orders.
Thank you for sharing that too, because I think, again, trying to demystify that part of the puzzle, I really appreciate when founders share like what is actually working. And so that a founder, if they're spinning in circles right now, like, okay, how do I grow to the next stage? Like you just gave them so many great next steps that are very tangible that they could take action on today to help build their consumer brand. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Of course, those are all ones that I stand by. So definitely would point new founders in those directions right away.
Awesome. Okay, last question, and I would argue the most important question. Where can we shop Pari?
So if you go to our website, which is drinkpari, PARI.com, we have our store locator there that we're always adding to as we get new accounts. So I would say, that would be the first place to check to see where's near you. We are also in a number of local specialty food and bev shops here in New York. So pop-up grocer, Happier Grocery, and some non-alc bottle shops as well that we love, like Spirited Away in Manhattan and Minus Moonshine in Brooklyn. And continuing to add to those accounts every week. So keep your eyes posted.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation, so insightful, and everyone go get yourself some Pari. And thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thanks.